Welcome to If Only You Knew, where each week we take a deep dive into the careers and experiences of people from different backgrounds, cultures, countries and ages to discuss pivotal moments in their lives and the lessons they have learnt along the way.
If they told people the truth, they wouldn't last very long.
Whether you're a school student in an established career, mapping your academic pathway, searching for the perfect career, looking to change careers, or just plain curious, then this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Christy McCormack, and I want to ask you, what would you do differently if only you knew? With me today is Katie Bunch. Katie is an experienced digital marketing, SEO, and PPC specialist and the manager of a boutique digital marketing agency based in Brisbane, Australia. Originally from the UK, Katie has spent the last decade in Australia working in the digital marketing space for agency and television. Welcome, Katie, and thanks for joining me today.
Hey, Christy, thanks for having me.
So, Katie, as I mentioned, you're from the UK and you completed high school in England where you completed your A-levels. Could you just give me and the listeners a quick overview on what A-levels are?
Okay, so A-levels is something that we do from the ages of 16, 17 and 18. There's multiple different options after high school that you can go on to do. So you can go through do your A-levels at college or sixth form. You can go on to go to college itself and you do like BTECs and different courses there, or you can go on to do an apprenticeship. I decided to stick with the school-based option and stay in school and do my last 2 years there, which was to do my A-level media studies, geography, economics and IT.
So did you have a clear path of what you wanted to do when you graduated from high school?
Honestly, no, not really at all. Full options about what I wanted to do with university. So it was either to go and do media and communications or to do economics and politics, which is completely different stuff. And as I progressed through the courses to do my A-levels, when I got into the last year of uni, I did decide to go through with the media and communications option. But I guess in high school, I feel like there wasn't really a lot of emphasis on like a career path as such. It was like, okay, well, what are you going to do next? And you're like, okay, well, that's okay to what you're going to do next, but it should have been more of what's your actual goal rather than what are you going to do next year or what are you going to do next year. For me, I think it would have been better to sit down with everybody and be like, okay, what do you actually want to do as a job, as a goal in the next 5-10 years? Whereas it wasn't really like that. It's just like, okay, well, what should we do next year? And so honestly, I didn't really know, not at all.
So one of my questions was going to be how supportive your school was, because from speaking to different people, it really does appear that different schools support students differently. So do you think that was something across the board with the education system in the UK or specific to your school where they just didn't have that real level of direction?
To be honest, for our school itself, it was probably a lot better than most schools in the UK. I went to quite a nice school. It wasn't a private school or anything like that, but it was a higher level of like a state school as such. And I think we had like one class on career paths, and then we got to do this online game. And it was like, oh, just choose all these different options about yourself and this is what you should do. So mine was to do something physical. That would either be like physical education or it was to be a physio or actually like nursing and medical, which obviously is not kind of path that I went down, but there wasn't really that kind of one-on-one discussion with the class, I guess, or with yourself as an individual. But I definitely think it was a lot better than most of the classes and most people's school experience with like careers and future guidance.
So do you think a lot of people took those sort of quizzes and questions and decided to take on careers based on those answers? Because obviously what they came out with for you were completely different to what you ended up doing.
Yeah. Honestly, I think it was all more a game. That was the way that it came across. It's like, oh, here's a game for you guys to have a go at doing. Like, oh, but after that, there was no, that's okay to say to people, oh, you fit into this category based on what you've selected, but there was no flat. There was no like, okay, well, this is what you've got. These are the options that we have for you moving forward for you to kind of make sure that, you pursue it, whether that be a career in as a physio or as a teacher. There was no sit down after that and do any follow-up. It's just like, here's this cool game for you to play on. It was a bit odd, really, if you look back at it, to try to, oh, this is how they thought we were going to decide what we were going to do as we grew. It was fun. Obviously, you can still do them today, don't you? Like, what shall I do when I grow up?
So did you have any idea of what types of jobs would be available after you graduated school?
Yeah, so in particular with media, yeah, there was obviously so another thing that they did is there was one day just before we were about to choose all our A levels where they'd go in and they'd say, if you chose geography, for instance, you could do, and it'd be like mainly a teacher. If you go on to do media, then you could pursue something in front of the television, in front of like the radio or behind the scenes. So they did do a little bit on that side, but again, it wasn't detailed enough. It wasn't really like this is the way that you can actually pursue that dream, or this is the way you can pursue that goal. It was kind of like these are the things you could do, but we won't tell you how to get there. Yeah. Well, that was my experience. I'm sure other people's was different, but I think from my experience, that's what I found.
Now, you're quite a creative person. Now, still speaking about high school, were you allowed to follow that creative side, or was school more about the academic subjects like English, maths, science?
For us, where our school's based, so in the UK, I'm from a really hippie area. So everyone's, very creative there anyway. There's a lot of artists and designers, musicians and things like that. So for us, it was actually quite a balanced option of academic versus creative subjects. A lot of my friends did creative dance. A lot of them went on to be designers, and I've got a lot of artist friends, a lot of people that work within design and fashion. So there were those options definitely for our school. We were quite lucky with that as well. So yeah, there was the option to pursue both paths as such. Yeah.
So you went on to study a Bachelor of Media and Communications, television production, and you graduated with honours. So congratulations on that. Could you tell me a little bit about this degree and what it actually entailed?
Yeah. Okay. So I guess with this degree, there was a good mixture of like hands-on production. That's the reason why I chose to do this particular degree at this particular university. So they had a really good a studio within the university. A lot of it was hands-on. You got to do a lot of what they called studio-based stuff and on location. So we were able to hire out equipment. We were able to go out and film. So again, with this course, it was great because there was quite an equal balance of those things, that you actually got to do this hands-on stuff. And from talking to other people about the degrees that they've done with like media and communications or with marketing, a lot of it is like the theory-based critical thinking side of things rather than being hands-on. So when people do leave university, they don't actually know how to edit or use any of the film and equipment or what it's like to be in a studio. So for me, I was quite lucky as we got to do a lot of those things, and that's the stuff that I thrived in and did really well. Not so much with the academic base, like the writing and that wasn't really my thing. Like, it's hard to be, subjective and find the meaning behind everything that you're watching or everything that you see in front of you. Like sometimes it's just nice to enjoy what you're watching rather than having to be like, oh, I think they've used that colour there because of this reason. Or sometimes it's just nice to sit and enjoy. And I think I was a bit different in that sense. A lot of my friends really they're all into their art films, the indie films, and I could watch just trash. Like it was really judgy that everyone was like, oh, you're watching this movie. I'm like, yeah, I enjoyed it. I'm not going to say that I didn't, but yeah, there was so like I said, the course was fantastic for that. Really great hands-on experience, and that did help me moving forward when going to get like work experience and actually applying for certain roles.
So did you get actual work experience while you were doing your degree? Did you intern or anything like that with a company?
Yeah. I did. I actually worked with the BBC, that was really good. So basically, it wasn't actually to do. There was a little bit of television production, but I actually did a lot on radio. So they had So I was based in Birmingham, and they have a BBC like studios and stuff there. So I used to go in and do some stuff on the radio. So I'd do updates and I'd do regular updates, weather updates, local things that were going on in the area. That was interesting because obviously hearing your voice back was always so. I'm a fidgeter as well, so I remember one time just being sat there with the pen, like, kept it away from me today, but the whole way through. And yeah, so I did get to do some pretty good stuff. I got to work with the BBC, and I'd always be the first person to put my hand up and offer to go out and do a bit of shooting and stuff. So producing videos that went up on what we refer to as like big screens around Birmingham City Centre. So it helped with like non-for-profit like videos and things like that, and they went up around the city. So yeah, to get to have a little bit of hands-on stuff, and I think that definitely helped as well. Just get stuck in.
So did you think that you got that opportunity because you sort of put yourself out there? Because that's a huge opportunity because BBC is very large in the UK. So yeah, how did you think that you scored that sort of opportunity?
Just making myself available, always insistent, like always putting myself there and going, I'll do that, whatever it is, I'll do it. Like I'm not fussed, so I'll get stuck into anything basically. And like I said, a lot of our stuff, I went there with the intention of doing television production, but even when the radio option came up, I was just like, no, I'll do it. Yep, sign me up. Like I was always the first person to put my hand up and just do it. Like I feel like you have to be that first person to take the jump or just kind of put yourself out there and be persistent. And I think that's in a couple of roles that I've got, it's because I am so persistent that I've kind of actually been able to land some of the, especially in particular the first role I got over here in Australia. But yeah, it's all about just putting yourself out there. If you don't do well, or I think a lot of people have that fear of doing something and not being great at it. Whereas I'm just like, okay, well if I do it, I'm rubbish. I've tried it. Like 100% put yourself out there. Be the first person to stick your hand up.
Because how hard is it really to get a job after graduating from a degree like that?
It's pretty hard. I would say from the people that I went to uni with, I'd say maybe only 10% of them really work within media now. Wow. In particular, in reference to university, like the course that we did. So obviously, my degree in part helps with my role, but it isn't it's not a direct link to my role. So I've got a couple of friends that still work in television. There's only one that's pretty big. He does a lot of productions himself, like he works, and so he does quite well. And then a few of the others moved into more PR kind of media communication-y sort of stuff, but no one really that works fully in the industry where I can be like, oh, I know so-and-so or I know so-and-so. Yeah, it's only really handful of them that we've gone on to actually pursue that. Honestly, the more time you spent in the degree doing what we were doing, the more realistic it came that at the end of this, a lot of us probably weren't going to be doing or working in the television industry, just because it is so hard to get into it.
And was that a bitter pill to swallow, to sort of had to come to that reality that you're doing a degree, but you might not actually end up pursuing the passion that you thought that you would?
It wasn't too bad for me. So whilst I was at university, I also had like a scholarship with the University of Birmingham, so with the RAF. And so on top of all my university stuff, I also did that as well. So I would go and fly planes and helicopters and go military training and doing like exciting stuff like that. And so for me, actually through the degree, I knew that it wasn't going to be very realistic probably to pursue television production, but I knew that I enjoyed just the culture and the environment of the RAF stuff that I had been doing, and there were options for me to go move into that a role there. Even with my degree being with media and communications, there were media options available there, so you'd be like a liaison officer. But through the 3 years, I kind of was looking at my options to actually join the RAF rather than to do television production. So things changed a little bit, as we'll see, but that was going to be my thing, as I wanted to join the RAF after leaving university. But
yeah. Things do change, but I think that's a really good lesson learned, that you need to be able to be a bit flexible with the options as it comes out, and the degree that you're doing might not necessarily be exactly where you end up, but it can be a gateway to so many different things. Okay, so then you moved to Australia. What made you decide to move to the other side of the world?
So straight after university, I was getting very itchy feet, and I was like, I'm going to go traveling. I'm just going to go and see the world for 10 months, 12 months, just go to Asia, travel around, see what it's like. And I basically got to Asia and decided, well, I've come this far, might as well go to Australia. So I just went to Australia. Then I just pretty much stayed. Fell in love with Australia, and I also did fall in love with somebody else, a gentleman who's not in the picture anymore, but he did help. Like obviously falling in love with him did actually help as well. And I was here for about 2 years before I went back to the UK. And after that, I knew that Australia was the place that I wanted to be. So applying for visas, sorting all that out, I decided to kind of move back, because I don't know, I go home every so often. I think, I could move back home just because my family and stuff's there. I'm there for about 3 weeks and I'm like, right, I'm done. And I want to come home. This is home now. So, yeah.
So obviously Australia wasn't the first choice on your bucket list. You were in Asia. Did you have jobs lined up before you decided to travel, or did you just decide, I'm just going to wing this?
I'm pretty much wing it. So once I finished uni, I basically worked solidly for a couple of months. I think it was about 4 or 5 months. Like I literally had, if there was any job going, I took it, I worked and I saved loads of money. And I thought, well, I'll just do that. I'll have enough money there to suffice for, 10 months in Asia, 12 months in Asia. And then when I got here and I was like, oh, I really should go to Australia. I wanted to go. I'm this close. I should just go. So I didn't come here with any intention of necessarily getting a job like, oh, this is what I want to do. This is where I want to go. I just got a flight that was the closest. It was, I ended up being in Bali and I was like, I'm just going to get a flight to Darwin. And I did in January. And it was horrible. I was like, oh my God. Yeah, it was 37 degrees when I landed, and I think I sweated for about 2 weeks solidly. And then I was like, I think I'm going to have to go a bit further down. So, yeah, it was like, Sydney, Brisbane. And I was like, right, I'll fly to Brisbane. And when I was there, I was like, right, it's a lot more expensive than you think it's going to be over here. So I was like, I'm definitely going to need a job. And they had a few like backpacker agencies, like job agencies. And there was one where I was staying and I was like, again, super persistent. I was like, I need a job. Please give me a job. I will do anything. Like, what jobs do you have going? And because a lot of people there wanted to work in Brisbane, they were like, oh, we don't really have much. And I was like, you must have something. Like, obviously, I look at the size of Australia, you must have something. And they're like, okay, well, we've got these 2 jobs. One of them was in Toowoomba and the other one was in a place called Junda, which is like 2 hours south of Longreach. So if nobody knows where Australia is, it's middle of nowhere. It takes you 18 hours on the bus to just get to Longreach. And then it was 2 hours south from Longreach to Junda. And there was literally nobody on the road. It was like nothing. And that's the job that I took. I was like, I'll take that one. It's the furthest one out.
Wow.
Yeah. So I went out there. My dad thought I was going to be murdered. And I was like, that'll be fine. Honestly, I've got this. I'm very strong. I got this. And I went out there and yeah, I ended up working in like a bar and then doing cooking and stuff because I realized I could cook. So they put me in the kitchen as well. Yeah. So that was my thing. Like I just was like, whatever, I'll just do the hardest thing that no one wants to do. And then it worked for me.
That's amazing because not very many people, to all the listeners out there, would end up in Longreach from Australia. So just Google Maps Longreach and it is literally in the middle of nowhere. So I think that you decide to go there.
Yeah, it was like 3,000 people there. So I was like, oh, it's on the map. It must be fairly big. You get there and it's like literally a street of shops. And then when you go to Junda, there's like 2 shops and they're sometimes open. And so, yeah, I think it's like a full 2-hour drive and you don't see anybody. There's no other, there is one. There's one village in between both of those and it's like another 20 minutes off the road, but there's nothing there. You could drive that entire road and not see a single person. It's pretty cool. Like, everyone's like best friends next door. They're like, oh, do you know so-and-so? And you're like, oh, from 6 hours down the road. Yeah. So it is a wonderful experience. And, for me as a backpacker, it was getting to know the real Australian. I think that's what helped me fall in love with the place.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's so much out there. I think most Australians haven't even travelled as far as probably most of the UK backpackers. So you can take a lesson from that one. Now, you ended up coming back to, I believe, Sunshine Coast, and you landed a job with one of the major television networks in Australia. Yep. But for our international listeners, Australia's only got 3 commercial television networks. So that's quite a coveted position to sort of land. Mm. How long were you in Australia before you got that role?
Probably about 3 years. Yeah. So nearly 4 years, sorry, but I did have to go back to the UK in between that. So all up, it was about 3 years that I was actually in Australia, but I'd moved from Longreach through to Hervey Bay. And when I moved there, everyone was like, there's no jobs. I don't know why you guys have decided to move here. I mean, it was for family reasons that we did. And I was there for 2 weeks and I'd already got 2 jobs. They were both in hospitality, but I got 2 jobs. And then basically I just started to try and pursue as much as I can and try and get into any of the television, radio stations, anything like that, any of the media jobs that came up, I'd try to apply for them. And obviously there wasn't that many going. So this role I'd actually applied for previously and I wasn't successful. And then it came up again and I was like, right, I'm going to go for this and I'm going to basically put myself out there and I'm just going to be very persistent and I'm going to go in and I'm going to see this person and I'm going to be like, please look at my application. I know I'm going to be a good fit here. And yeah, that's exactly what I did and ended up getting the role. So that was good.
So do you think that perseverance actually paid off? Like going that sort of extra step?
Look, absolutely. I think there's only so much you can learn from somebody from a piece of paper or an application that they've put through. And I don't think you get a real sense of the individual on that piece of paper. And so I just wanted to kind of make sure that, yeah, you can see what I've done here, but I want you to meet me and see what I'm about. Like, you can't really go, anyone could put like willing to learn, super energetic, definitely puts herself out there. Like, you can write all those things, but actually kind of showing that. So I just kind of walked in one day, like, knock, knock, came in. I was like, I know I've already applied online, but I just wanted to say hello, and I wanted to give you my application in person. Yeah, and like so, it did work. And yeah, so I mean, it did help that I knew that I didn't know him, but I knew he was a nice person, so I knew he wasn't going to be rude to me. So I didn't know him, but I knew of him, and I knew that he was pleasant. So I was like, right, well, at least I'm not going to walk out there crying. At least he'll be nice to my face. So yeah, I thought, just bite the bullet, go in there and see him.
So you scored that role,
yeah.
But what did you start off doing when you started there?
Yeah, so my first role there was to work as a sales assistant. So that was assisting all the account managers and the area manager. But I was also quite lucky in the fact that I was also able to help with the production team as well. So obviously there was two functions to our office. We had the actual TV crew that went out, and they had their journalists and stuff there. And then in our section, it was the marketing and production. So I used to go and try and help as much as I could on all the production. So if we had to go out and do a shoot, I was able to go out and help sometimes because I was familiar with the editing suite Avid. I also did a little bit of Excel whenever needed me to help in there. Just a few little, like I do a bit of Photoshop stuff. So I was able to help in little ways. So it was good because I got to at least use a little bit of my knowledge that I picked up from my degree to assist in that area too. So yeah, it was really good. I thoroughly enjoyed that role as well. A lot of it was like analytical and organizing, and so we would do placements of TV ads on the TV. So obviously, when you get a break, you have a certain amount of ads that fit in there. Well, they all have particular codes, and when you pop them into the back end it's called traffic, and it's a traffic system. So you put all these ads in there, and they have little codes on them. So those codes can't clash with. So you have to move all the ads around to make sure that they fit in within these half an hour to an hour breaks to make sure that they don't have the same thing. So for instance, like Hungry Jack's and McDonald's should never be in the same ad break. Any of the car, if you've got Hyundai and Toyota, they shouldn't be in the same one. Yeah, it's just little things like that. So you'd have to move them around to kind of like doing a big jigsaw puzzle all the time, basically. So you'd have to fit them all in. I loved it. Like, I got to work with not just my department. I got to work with Toowoomba, Sunshine Coast. I got to do stuff for Townsville. So like I said, if you get your job, you get to do. I got to do all these different things and work for everybody and not just my department. So that really helped me then move on to the next stage, because it's not very often that they'll move a sales assistant into a sales role. So I applied for this job twice as well.
I love that perseverance. That's awesome. Now, how differently do television networks operate from other businesses in other industries?
Yeah, I've got to say the one thing that really stood out to me from working with the television industry and then from any other business that I've ever worked for, is the level of competitiveness internally. So obviously especially from a sales perspective, the idea is obviously, and again, as an agency, you always you want to go out and you want to make sure that, that client chooses you over another agency. Whereas in a lot of in the TV networks, it seemed to be a lot of internal stuff as well. So not only would you be trying to battle out win or 10, you'd be battling the other sales assistant or another sales assistant in a different area. It was just, I don't know, that bit to me was difficult, because for me, I've always been very much about the team and being very supportive, and it seemed to be this weird, like I say, this competitiveness between the two sales reps. Rather than working together, you're always battling each other, and that's the bit I found the most difficult about working with the television networks. So it's quite hard for that.
Because advertising revenue is pretty much the basis on how any television network operates. So how much pressure is on the advertising and marketing departments to deliver, even for the sales reps? So the sales reps might go out there and sort of, win that account, but then the marketing and advertising department has to actually deliver on that. So how much pressure did you feel?
There was just non-stop pressure all the time. It was a huge amount of pressure. And the thing is, you'd have KPIs or revenues that you'd have to meet. And then if you did good, like, but you can do better. And it was always, you can do better, or you can do this. And again, that was a difficult thing for me, because a lot of the times, a lot of those KPIs were based on make sure you have a certain percentage of those sales in one channel. So, with 7, they have multiple channels that expect you to have a certain percentage on 7, on 7.2, on 7.8. So you'd have to get an even split, but that's not necessarily the demographic that your client's trying to target. So for me, I was always look at the data when I knew certain audience was watching, and certain television shows that I knew was going to match or work for that client, but didn't match or work for my KPI. So it was always like a balance for me to do the right thing by my client, but also to make sure I got my KPIs, because obviously that's the way you got your money, right? It is quite difficult, and like I said, there was a lot of pressure onto constantly do better, get us more. And I say, like, it is, and again, it was hard because even back then, TV was slowly dying out. People were starting to move more towards digital. So to try and constantly convince people all the time to use TV or any traditional method of marketing, it was getting harder. So I think my manager at the time, my area manager, Mark, he was great. He was very realistic about the goals. If there were certain times where, for instance, there'd been a flood or something terrible had happened in that area, and obviously people didn't have money, like the funds to do any marketing, for example, he would always have your back. He was very supportive like that. So again, I was lucky to have a good manager there. So whilst there was a lot of pressure, I got a lot of support from him as the manager. Yeah, so that was all good. But yeah, it's just non-stop pressure all the time, every day.
One of my questions was going to be, how hard is it to be creative all of the time as a creative person? Do you see that creative burnout's a thing?
Yeah, I do. Look, it is really hard, and especially it's difficult, especially like, so for instance, like with marketing, there's only so many ways you can say a very similar thing. And a lot of the time, you'll find that a lot of clients aren't necessarily willing to invest in that research and design part of, the process. It's kind of like, oh, here's my goal, this is what I want. And you're like, okay, so if that's what you want, we need to kind of put in place and get an idea first. And a lot of people don't necessarily want to invest time with that. So it's kind of just constantly trying to produce this end goal, and it always be bigger and better than something else that's been produced. And it is very subjective as well. So when you're trying to create something for somebody, you might think, honestly, this is the best work I've ever done, and they'll go, oh, yeah, that's rubbish. You need to start again. Like, it is difficult. I also used to find that it was harder to work with a client that didn't know what they wanted rather than somebody that did. It's easier to go for a client to tell you, I want this, and you say, okay, I can do X, Y, and Z based on your budget and based on our skill set or the ability, the resources and ability that we have, rather than a client that would go, I don't know what I want. You just go and just be creative, right? You'd come back like, look what I reduced. And they're like, no, no, that's not what I wanted. And then you'd be like, okay, well, what did you want? They're like, I don't know, just not that. They were the most, I always used to find they were the most difficult ones. Luckily, I didn't have to it was more production that I had to deal with the stresses of that by the time I'd got into the account executive role. So, but yeah, like I said, I used to still go out with Selwyn and do a lot of that production stuff with him and feel his pain. Yeah.
So while you're at Channel 7, did you experience conflicting demands between your client and your employer, or was it more harmonious because both sides needed the advertising campaigns to succeed?
I think yes. Obviously, like I said, for me, it was about driving results and making sure that the clients saw, people walking in through that door, people buying their products, wanting their services. Whereas I think from a Seven's perspective, it really was about revenue and making sure that we'd hit all those KPIs that we needed to hit. Yeah, I think that obviously they did want it to work, but I don't think it was to the same degree as the client wanting it to work. Like for me, like it was very much like I wanted them to see positive results. Great if I hit my KPIs, but that was my first goal, and then my KPIs came second, which didn't always go down so well. But I was like, if I do the right thing by the client, they're going to want to keep coming back and working with us. If I do the right thing by you, they're not going to get the results and they're not going to want to come back. So it's going to be harder for me to then talk to that client and convince them to keep working with us if they've not seen the results in the first place. So I always used to try and say, like, yeah, I understand you want me to hit those KPIs and hit that revenue, but also if we do the wrong thing by this client initially, they'll be burnt and they won't want to come back anyway. So yeah, it was always interesting. Like I said, and my manager, he always used to have my back on that as well, and completely agreed that it was about the results first and the KPI second. That from the top, it was KPIs then results.
Yeah, so from the top down, it was really about, bottom line, but then you had to be the person that balanced. And
that's right. Yeah, absolutely.
So what do you think some of your biggest learning curves were and lessons learned during your time at Channel 7?
Yeah, I think it's, like I said, it's very, the most important thing to do is not sell for selling's sake. Like, yeah, okay, you might be meeting those revenue demands and those KPIs, but again, if you burn that bridge straight away and that's your only goal, a client's going to see straight through that. They're going to know that is exactly what you did. There was a lot of times that I witnessed that from other sales account executives that would only really sell a client packages or spots on TV based on he knew that he had to meet these certain KPIs. Then they wouldn't want to work with him, and then they came over to me because they knew that I cared about them. I cared about actually getting results for the client, and I wasn't just here to just take their money. I really wanted to see it work for them. So I think the most important thing is look, I know everyone has KPIs, but also you've got to do the right thing for you, and that is to make sure that you're doing the right thing for your client. Otherwise, again, you won't work with them again. You'll work with them once, and that's that. They won't trust you. And the other thing for me was make sure you put everything in writing. If you have a phone call or you go out to see clients, like always put it in writing afterwards what you've discussed, because not everyone, but I used to have a couple of clients that would insist every single time that I'd offered them this free spot or this free spot or this, and I'd be like, as per our email, and then it was all stepped out. So that was my biggest learning curve. I did that once and I didn't follow up directly after the email. Like I just thought, oh, this guy's okay. I won't have to tell him exactly what we've discussed. No. It's like, Katie offered me X, Y, and Z. And I was like, hang on, wait, no, I didn't do that. And then, yeah, so from that point, I always make it a big thing of mine. So if I try and have client meetings, especially with the ones that are referred to as being a bit more difficult, I always try and put down exactly what we've talked about, even if that's a quick bullet point. It goes directly to them, especially if they're requiring feedback, or I make notes of it. So I know exactly what's being discussed through every single meeting. And then I know, obviously, I've got myself covered if there's anything that comes back. And obviously, people try stuff all the time, but if you've got notes and you've done your due diligence and kind of followed up on those sort of things, it shouldn't ever come back and bite you in the butt. Yeah,
that's a really good insight, because I think that's across all businesses. If you can put things in writing, then you don't want to have to cover your backside, but sometimes you just need to. So
there's always one. There's always one client, and that'll be the one that gets you in tears. But if you know to follow up on your emails, you can still cry, but you're right.
Now, it must have been really good to cut your teeth in such a large organisation, but you moved from Channel 7 into a marketing agency. So why did you decide to make that move?
The initial move itself was I ended up actually just leaving Australia for nearly 12 months. I think it's a little bit longer, about 12 months. I ended up having to go back to the UK for 12 months just with personal reasons and stuff. So when I went back, I kind of, like I said, I wasn't sure if I was going to stay there. I actually applied to go back to university when I was there because I was like, oh, well, if I'm here, I might as well. Yeah, so I actually got accepted to go and do nursing. Yeah, so I was going to do mature rater nursing and then pursue a career as a nurse, and then also join the RAF with my nursing degree and go and work with them. And I ended up coming back to Australia because I missed it so much. Yeah, so I was like, it was a real big, I had to make another big decision there. Do I pursue the RAF and the medical stuff I wanted to do, or do I come back to Australia? And Australia pulled me back, and I ended up coming back here. And I basically said, I mentioned to my friends, I'm moving back. And somebody that I'd actually worked with at 7 was just like, oh, I've got this role for you. It's actually in digital marketing. She goes, I just know you're going to be really good at it. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll give it a go. It's kind of similar to TV advertising. Let's give it a go. Let's see what happens. So I ended up coming back, and I literally got the job straight away because pretty much, I think I landed, and then about 2 weeks later, after settling in, I was starting this job. So I was so lucky because, again, the knew that I was going to be, she knew like I was very tenacious and always like wanted to do something, I was always keen to kind of get stuff done, and I'm always learning. But so anyway, yeah, she just went, do you want this job? And I was like, sure, why not? Let's do it. Started, yeah. And I was like, oh my God, I love it. Yeah.
So digital marketing is really in a space of its own. And, I think many of us only see Google as a search engine, but your understanding of Google is on a whole nother level. So how hard is it to actually understand and work with Google on a day-to-day basis?
A lot more difficult than you think it should be. So there's a couple of ways that we work with Google. We work with them using Google Ads directly, which means that essentially it's a PPC that you discussed at the start, which is a pay-per-click campaign. So that's one way that we work with Google, that's a good way because you're paying for those spots that you are, in the Google search engine, they actually give you more options to phone them, discuss things with them. They give you more insight into the data that's coming through and how people have performed on the website, and there's lots of different options to actually assist you there. From a SEO perspective, you don't pay for anything. So when you're doing search engine optimization, it's very much what we do is like a best practice scenario. So Google changes their algorithm 500 to 600 times a year. So it's slight variations all the time. I think there's only like 2 people in the entire world that know about all of the algorithms and how they work. Like they all work like in silent, like they don't work together. They'll have one team that deals with X algorithm, another team that'll deal with another algorithm, and then none of them actually work together. They work on their own little bits. I think there's only like 2 people that know exactly what's going on with Google, like
Wow.
all of the algorithms. It's pretty interesting stuff. Mm-hmm. But so it can be really difficult from an SEO perspective for us to stay on top of those sort of things, to make sure that we are naturally manipulating people's websites to stay in those top positions. So it's a lot of research, a lot of understanding what's happening, the way that we plan any of our SEO tasks. Everything is staggered out. So we never do, 5 tasks at once. We do 1 task. We allow that some time. We see how that's reacted, how that's changed all of our rankings. And then we go, okay, based on this data, we can also do this task, and this task. And all of these little bits of these tasks will build up to us, obviously increasing rankings. But again, it's not like we'll do a good thing in Google, like, yeah, you did a good thing, well done you. Yeah, you've just got to kind of do what you think's best based on your research and your experience. Hope that works well. Look at the results, and then leverage those results, and then just keep going and steadily building up all these things that we've done. And we do it in such a way that if you do stop doing SEO, you're not seeing a huge ranking decrease. We do it with what we refer to as like a best practice, and we keep that in mind when we're doing anything to do with Google and to do with SEO. And that makes sure that if we do, like obviously, like saying 500, 600 algorithms each year, obviously we can't fully understand or comprehend all of those different algorithms. But if we do what we believe is the best thing and what is referred to as white hat tactics, we usually don't see too much in the way of fluctuation of our keywords. And when we do, we always just kind of take a step back and we'll go, let's not do anything hasty, because obviously these algorithms change all the time. So we'll notice a massive drop. We'll go, right, we're going to give it 7 days. We'll see what it does. We won't touch anything. And typically what we do see is it's a shift where it drops significantly and then it's back up here. So we try and, I say it's easy to kind of panic a little bit with all these changes that Google does. But if you know that you doing the right thing consistently, that usually does help. So, yeah. And also great content. Great content is always going to get you good rankings. So, yeah, that's what we really do focus on with our SEO. Obviously, there's the technical stuff behind the scenes, but yeah, just saying like doing as much white hat stuff you can as possible. Try not to. Grey's okay, just black, which is all your link farms and doing like buying links through to the website, doing keyword spamming into your content and things like that. Definitely a massive no-no. But yeah, just trying to understand Google and Google doing its Google thing. Yeah, it can be difficult. We get the amount of questions I get from clients like, oh, I Googled this and then I saw the paid ads and then I saw a map and then I saw my organic, but then I Googled it again and I didn't get the map. Why don't I have the map? And I was like, honestly, Google is changing that stuff all the time. They're always testing stuff out. You could put in the same keyword 10 times and get 10 different search results. That's how often it's changing. So like I say, it's really hard to give clients a black and white or a yes or no answer about why Google's doing a thing that Google's doing. We don't really know, but we just try our best, like basically. We're just trying our best.
Given the complexity of, SEO and Google AdWords and just Google in general, how difficult is it to balance those client expectations against the reality of what you can actually deliver to them, given that it's just out of your control, basically, what happens and Google does?
From there's two different ways that we look at this. Obviously, your main goal for every single client is to make sure that you are on that first page in those top positions, whether that be a paid or whether that will be organically. That is always our main goal from whatever we do. From a PPC perspective, we do get a lot of guidance from Google because of we pay for the data, so therefore it's there. It allows us to access it, allows us to do all the changes and stuff that we need. So it can be like we have more of an idea of how a campaign is going to perform from PPC because we get that data and we get all the data to analyze. We can use that to kind of give us an idea of what to do moving forward, what keywords we should be targeting, what we shouldn't be targeting, based on results from our other clients that we possibly have experience with. This is the results that we've seen from their campaigns. Again, because we pay for the data, we can see it. Whereas with an SEO campaign, a lot of people want to know what the timeframes are, and the reality is we can't tell you how long something's going to take. We wish it was a month to 3 months, and if it was, I'm sure Tristan would be a millionaire because we could just we'd be doing it for everybody. But the fact of the matter is there are so many variants as to why one website might rank better than the other. Our job is just to try and make sure that we get there, like I said, use all of our knowledge and all of our experience to make sure that the clients do get into those positions. And I think sometimes people don't realize how long that might take. If you're working with an industry that's quite competitive, for instance, selling blinds, like there's so many companies that sell blinds. You can't be expected to do 3 months worth of SEO and see yourself on the first page. It's just, for those bigger keywords where you've got like blinds online or blinds Brisbane or something along those lines. It's just, you can't see yourself sat on position 1, 2, or 3 within 3 months. It's not realistic. You're looking more 24 months. And I think people just presume that once you start, you're going to see those top rankings straight away. And, as much as we'd like that, because it makes our job so much easier if we just see you in those, those nice, what we refer to as green spots, because that's what our reporting system comes up as. It'd be a lot easier for us, but the reality is that it isn't that easy. And we just, like I said, we just constantly do what we believe is the best method, best approach to getting the clients in those spots. Yeah. And I guess the other thing as well is we've got one client that is in those top spots, and they aren't getting as many conversions or inquiries as they would like to see. And just because you're in those top spots doesn't mean you're going to be getting what you think you're going to be getting as well. So that's the other reality to look at, is that we'd expect you being in positions 1, 2, and 3, you would get a lot of traffic and a lot of inquiry. The client's getting a lot of traffic, but not necessarily the level of inquiry that they wanted. So again, then we go back and we look at conversion rate optimization. Is there something wrong with the site? Is it the branding? It's another level to start looking at. So like I say, we would love it to be 100% successful 100% of the time, and like within a couple of months, because then you're like, oh, job's done. It's like that. It's just, unfortunately, it's just not that. It's just not like that. It's constant, every day, every month, checking, optimizing, updating every day. Yeah.
It's hugely complex. And look, I don't want to disparage anybody, but there are many people who think that sort of they're marketing and social media gurus because they know how to run their own Instagram account and they have a lot of followers. What do you think about the emergence of these, experts?
Look, it is a hard one because I honestly doing organic social stuff, so obviously posting organically, naturally on Facebook, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, any of the social platforms that you're on, it is very time consuming. And it can be quite hard to get your message and get your branding or your tone of voice across. So I do appreciate people that spend time and I guess are, I'd say, influencers or social media gurus as such are like, absolutely hats off to them. They obviously put in a lot of time and effort for what they're doing. I completely get that. And it is something that can be difficult for an agency to replicate because we aren't the face of your brand, you are. So I like I said, completely hats off to them. A lot of them do an absolutely fantastic job. But that's not the only thing that you should be looking at when it comes to marketing. There's so many other factors, like say you mentioned the PPC. There's paid social ads. There's email marketing. There is search engine optimization. It is about having a good website. There's so many other factors, and that turns into a full-time job as well as doing all the organic posting, which can also be a really full-on job as well. So whilst I think it is great that a lot of them can do that, and if that is their only job, absolutely cracking. But a lot of businesses, that isn't their only job, and it is hard for them to be able to focus on doing a full-time marketing job plus also running their day-to-day business. So like I said, it's good, but also at the same time, I do think that it's always wise to speak to a marketing company or a consultant about better ways to free up your time to run your business accordingly, and not necessarily the marketing, because it can be complex and it can be tricky to understand and very time consuming as well. So it's always definitely worth speaking to an agency about if there's smaller things that they can assist you with. That if it's going to cost you a couple of $100 for them to run something, and it's going to take you 10 hours a month to do it. Well, is it, you've got to look at the cost benefit of that. Is it worth your 10 hours, or is it cheaper to actually get an agency to do that externally? So yeah, it is that like I said, honestly, social for me is I honestly find it a very difficult platform. All the organic stuff that people do and the posting that they do, honestly, I give 100% full props to people that do that, because they're so, you've got so many warriors out there and trolls and people that just kind of can't help but say something negative, and you've got to wear that every single day, and then just saying stuff about your creative concepts and all that kind of, it's difficult. So yeah, well done to all the people that are out there doing that.
Now, speaking about running business, you've moved more into a managerial role over the past few years. Did you find the shift from dealing with clients to managing staff and budgets and everything else that comes with management challenging to be able to balance all of those different aspects of a managerial role?
Yeah, I think to a sense it has, because I find myself maybe spread a little thinly now. I love all the technical side of things. I love building campaigns. I love analyzing the data, and I love, doing technical stuff on websites and things like that. But as I moved into more of a managerial role, it was impossible for me to do all of those things, plus try and manage everybody. And as research starts to grow and we start getting we've got more staff and more clients, I have to oversee more of those, the bigger picture stuff, rather than me being able to do any of the technical stuff. So I think it was more difficult for me to give up doing the thing that I love doing, rather than the balance of it all, I think, because I'll just try and squeeze in, and Tristan will come in and be like, are you working on something? I'm like, and I'm fixing something on a website. And he's like, you're supposed to be scheduling that out to people. No, but I love that. So it's hard for me to not want to do the things that I love tinkering about with, or fixing, or updating, or building campaigns. So that was the biggest shift for me, for not doing as much of the technical roles that I wanted to do. I still get to talk to clients all the time, which is nice, and go out to meetings, and then I'm able to speak to the technical team, and they undertake all the work. And actually, as we do move away from me doing more of the technical stuff, it's easier to talk to clients about things that aren't working for them, because you're not as heavy, you're invested, but it's not your work, so it's not as personal, if that makes sense. So you can be a little bit disconnected from whether it's been the best campaign you've ever set up in your whole life, to being able to be realistic about, okay, so obviously this needs tweaking, or this needs updating, or maybe we'll approach it from this angle. So it allows me to kind of be able to get those to be able to get make notes and be able to give feedback that might not necessarily be positive, but certainly helps. And I have found that as well, being more in this managerial role, is that I'm kind of more open to, you don't feel so hurt if someone's Yeah, they'll look at you, what you've set up for like remarketing or what you've done on your face, like your socials and stuff, like, oh no, we don't like that. You're like, oh God, like, what do you want? And then I can give the feedback in a nicer way to the guys that are doing all the technical stuff. So yeah, that bit's been good for us as well. Yeah.
So when you hire staff, what's the most important attribute that you look for?
I think for us, it's a cultural fit. Who's going to fit in with the team here? I think with skills, especially when it comes to, with the Google ad side of things, any of the PPC, whether that's social, Google, search engine optimization, a lot of this stuff can be learned. And if you're willing to learn and you're willing to train up, then all those things we can teach you. But, being part of the team and having a good work ethic, you can't really teach somebody how to have that. So when we're looking at people joining the team, we do look about, are they going to fit in with us? Because we're all a bit nuts. So like, it's just like, are you going to fit in with the crazy people that are in the office? Like, this is what we want to know. Do you have the same energy, the same drive? Any of the skills? If you're lacking, skills on client communication, or if you're not all up to date with Google Analytics, that's fine. So that's something we can teach you. But actually wanting to sit down, get stuck in, learn all of this stuff, we can't teach you how to do that. So that's our number one thing. We like to meet people and talk to them about them and what they've done, rather than what skills that they have or what previous experience they have in X, Y, and Z. It's just, those are things that we can teach you how to
So if you've got a job up and somebody pops into your office and hands you their CV directly, you'll be happy with that then.
Honestly, 100%. That's actually how we got the copywriter that we've got, the new copywriter that we've got at the moment. So obviously with everything happening with COVID, she lost her job. I think she believed she lost her job, and she was basically emailing loads of agencies and saying, this is my work, this is what I've done. Like, I'm really looking for a role that's like X, Y, Z. And we were like, oh, okay. Let's meet her. Let's see how she goes. So we met her, but she's lovely. She'll fit in perfectly with this team. And to be honest, we actually do need an in-house copywriter. And it was from her approaching us that we knew, that she is going to be right for the role. And she's been wonderful. She's absolutely fantastic. And she just fits in. She's fit in from day one. So, yeah, we were really looking, like I said, if you can reach out to people, they might not necessarily have a job on that's going right now, but they're going to go, oh, that person that contacted us, let's see if we can, if there's going to be a role going. If there's not one going now, there might be in a few weeks or a few months' time as agencies start to grow. And unfortunately, with a lot of agencies, they do have a high turnover, of staff. So put yourself out there. Even if you do interning for a day or two, that's still a great thing to do. That's how we got Ellie. Like, Ellie joined our team by doing some interning. She was absolutely fantastic. Again, fit in with everybody so well. That was like our main thing. And now she's with us full time. So again, it's hard to do free work for people. I completely get that, but just put yourself out there. Even if you said to us, one of us, like, oh, can I do one day a week or one day every fortnight or something like that when she's still doing university stuff, like that's fantastic. That's a really good initiative. And I think that's important for people to kind of get stuck in that way.
That's really good insight. And I hope that, all the listeners who are in university at the moment and, have aspirations of working for, digital marketing agencies, take on board the advice that you've done and put yourself out there. You did it with BBC, you did it with Seven, you're doing it with your own role, and you're following that on in the way that you lead people as well. Yeah. But I do have one final question for you. Yeah. What would you do differently if only you knew?
And I was like, oh wow, this is a good question. It is hard because obviously I feel like all the decisions I've made obviously have taken me up to this point in my life, which I'm happy with. I'm in a good place. So I was like, maybe not what I would do differently, but maybe in another life. So next time around, I was thinking I would definitely pursue more of the, I was very interested in science. I was good at science at school. I should have pursued that, gone down that medical route, probably, had a different, like a career in medicine and stuff like that. That would have been something that I would have liked to have done, but this life, but maybe in my next life, that'll be my option.
Well, Katie, it's been so good to speak to you today. You've got such an amazing journey from, over in the UK, studying, going to university, jumping on a plane, coming to Australia, going back and forth a few times, and then settling here. And I'm really glad that you are now settled in Australia. Thanks for taking the time to talk to me, and I probably will have to chat to you because Google is doing my head in trying to understand everything. I'm definitely not a social media guru.
No, honestly, You call me anytime, Christy. I've always got time for you. And honestly, thank you so much for thinking of me for this podcast. Like, it's an absolute honor, with the other ladies that you've interviewed. I was just like, oh wow, so lovely.
Absolutely. No, I've really enjoyed taking the time to talk to you today, Katie. And if you'd like to know more about Katie, you can feel free to connect with her on LinkedIn. As she said, she's very open to people connecting with her. Full bio will be available on our website, ifonlyyouKnewpodcast.com.au. And I'll also have a link to Research Digital, where Katie is currently the office manager there. So thanks, Katie.
No, thank you.
For more information about our guests or our show, visit ifonlyyouKnewpodcast.com.au.